Hey all, my name is Jordan and welcome back to the Scooter Woodworks channel. Today's episode is part 3 of my entry into the 2021 Great Guitar Build Off Scratch Build Competition. Today we're going to be working on the body. We're going to be starting from the blank piece of poplar that I began with, to cutting out its rough shape, to routing the final shape, to gluing on the maple top, bending that over that arm bend, and then also doing some final sanding. And at the very end, we'll talk a little bit about the test colors I'm working on. So stick around. So we're gonna run way back into the past here and have a look at me taking that poplar blank that I had milled up and gluing it up in some clamps. And I'm just using regular Titebond 1. I can't remember if I've said anything about this before, but I like Titebond 1 for this because it is not waterproof or water resistant, and so it does take a color and it kind of helps hide the glue seam a little bit more than otherwise using another set. So after leaving that in clamps overnight, I took it out, and it was just kind of wide enough that I could trim off some pieces and get it to run through my planer to get it to the thickness I was looking for, which is 5/8 of an inch, 1 5/8 of an inch, because Stratocasters are typically 1 3/4, and my maple top is 1/8 of an inch. So run that through the planer, got that to the right thickness, and then started at it with the bandsaw to cut it out to rough shape. And you'll see me previously in here making relief cuts in those curves around the horns, so that way it's easier to get the blade through such tight radiuses. I probably could do with a slightly thinner blade. I think that is like a 3/16 blade, or 3/8 blade I should say, and could do with a smaller one for sure. So with that shaping done, I take it over to my oscillating belt sander. I can put some spindles on there too, and just kind of get it again as close to the line as possible before I use my flush trim bit of the router table to get it to the final shape. I've learned my lesson in the past that if you try to take too much off with the router, you will be sorry. And so I made sure I spent a long time sanding it there. And then we go at it with the flush trim bit. Now I started this clip in here going at real time, so you can kind of see the speed at which I'm going. I've got the speed on the router turned down because it's a big bit, and I'm also moving slow, and hopefully that combination can help me avoid burn. I'd sand that out anyway. Now we're going at super speed to get through the process because it would take a long time otherwise to show you me doing this. The router is the messiest tool in my shop. I'm sure it might be the messiest tool in any shop, and so that's why I've got my homemade router table set up on sawhorses right outside my garage. Easier to clean up that way. So the next step for me was to work on the arm bend, and I went at that mostly here with my trusty belt sander. You know, there's other ways you can do this. You can set up jigs to run it through a bandsaw. My bandsaw doesn't really have a big enough capacity to do that. You can set up a jig to run it through on your table saw. I have enough jigs, I think, right now. So I decided I would just go at it with the belt sander. You know, I've done this before on my previous build, which was a Jaguar. Use this method to get the arm bend in. You'll notice also on the top I've already cut the neck pocket in and routed out some of the cavities for the pickups, and I'm going to address that a little bit later, but I didn't go to full depth because I wanted to wait till I had the top on to get to that full depth. So after I did that, I thought that was looking pretty good. So now I've got to get the maple top ready. So take that back over there to the bandsaw. cutting some relief cuts to get that radius on that horn there. Same thing on the other side. Then we're ready to proceed with the next step, which was to get that top to bend over. So off camera, I carved some relief channels with my little rotary tool and clamped where it needed to bend with a caul, and then used a couple of other places just to kind of hold it in place. And then I wet it really good with a wet rag, dipping it in my solo cup there multiple times. And then after taking some time there to get it nice and damp, I just kind of placed the rag on it and then begin applying some clamps. So the goal here is just to use the moisture to soften the wood and a little bit of heat. So I guess this is kind of like a very crude method of steam bending, essentially, is what I'm doing. Using a heat gun here, trying to get the rag warm, and then start applying some clamps. So what you'll begin to see now as this footage speeds up is I'll put some more water on there, start applying the clamps, kind of pushing it down a little bit. I realize that it'd probably be a good idea for me to pull the rag out from underneath the maple top so it can bend all the way down. I'm also realizing that I probably should have removed the little plastic feet from the clamps, because a couple of those got a little melty from the heat gun. And this was my first time doing anything like this, and so I really wasn't sure that this would work how I was doing it. You know, I've, like everybody, had watched a couple of YouTube videos and seen people doing similar things with some success. And so, you know, I was hopeful. I thought it would work. I wasn't completely sure. You know, then I had the clamp management problem. Every time I would tighten one side, another side would loosen because it was continually applying pressure. You know, it made the clamp loosen. So I was working to sort of uniformly tighten them all. And by this point, I'd pretty much got it pushed all the way down. I was real pleased with how that had turned out, at least in the moment, and was now just trying to get consistent clamping pressure all the way around on that top so that I could leave it to sit and dry out and then stay that way. You know, went and got a couple more clamps out of the clamp drawer. Checking my progress here. Grabbing some pics for the gram. Check me out on Instagram if you don't, or if you haven't seen me yet. Scooter Woodworks. And so yeah, we get it done. Real pleased with how it turned out when I left it. The quilted maple top, after I dampened it, has been sitting clamped to the top of the body blank here for a few days now. I had a chance to start working on some other things I needed to work on and wrap up some stuff in my day job. So now what I'm going to do is take it out of the clamps and just kind of see how it's holding. So far so good. It's split. It looks like a little bit here, but that may be off in the waist along the glue seam. I guess that's not too bad for my first time doing something like this. the next step is going to be for me to get this on here glued. But what I want to do before I apply glue is get a lot of these little pieces out of the way. But I'm going to look again at how this is sitting on this body and kind of make sure I'm getting the best contact with it that I can. Okay. Now I've drilled shallower than needed, the cavities for the pickups, for the controls, and for the jack. I haven't plumbed that to the final depth because I want to get the top on it and make sure that I don't jack it up. You know, there's still a lot of time left for me to utterly screw this up. And, you know, I did the math in my head mentally to figure out, okay, this is how deep the neck pocket needs to be if I have 1/8 of an inch on top of this, and 5/8 is the depth of the neck pocket. And so I put, took an 1/8 off of that and got a 1/2 inch, and so I routed this pocket at 1/2 inch. When I started doing this with tremolo, I'd worried that I had kind of messed up because it's a through route, but I realized that it's kind of okay because that shelf that sits in the back is in the back. And this I did go ahead to 5/8. So this is done. And so the plan is, I got some nasty clamp marks there. I should have put a call on that. Okay. I think now I'm kind of at the point where I just need to make sure I have all my material assembled and get to it. Okay, so I've got all my pieces, I've got my calls. It's time to do applying the glue. And the goal here is going to be apply enough, not too much. I don't think I want to get into pockets. And what I'm hoping I'll be able to do is just kind of use the template to find where I'll need to poke out to drill out the pieces in the top. So, all right, well, let's do it to it. Okay, so speeding up the footage here, but it's just me brushing the glue onto the body. Pretty straightforward. So what I'm attempting to do here is to get good coverage, but at the same time not have so much glue that I get squeezed out into cavities in the middle and everything like that. I wound up having some squeeze out in some places, but I was really able to kind of clean that up. It wasn't in areas that I wasn't able to clean up at that moment or later. And then it was getting things lined up and just so I could apply basically every clamp I have, because as David Picciuto says, at Make Something, you can never have enough woodworkers telling you can never have enough clamps. I'll leave a link in the description to the video where I sourced that from of his, and you should check out his channel. David Picciuto's awesome. Okay, so I've got the body out of the clamps, and it's kind of what it looks like. Turned out pretty good, I think, for my first time doing it. Got a little split right there that I think I can manage, and I've got a good bit of excess waste that I'll be trimming off, which I think that's the next step. And then after that, it'll be carving out these cavities. So I've got that bit there where the neck goes, and then I'll have to relocate where all of these pieces are here. So that way that can be taken care of. So it was back to the bandsaw for what I think was the final trip to the bandsaw for this guitar build. And, you know, just carving all that excess away from the glue up, trying to get as close as I can to the body so I don't have a lot of sanding to do to get it finished up. But after getting as close as I could at the bandsaw, then it was time to take it over to that belt sander, oscillating belt sander, and then get it again as close as I could. You know, and I cut out a lot of footage of me sanding at various points and carving and grinding. Now here, using my router removed from the table to get that neck pocket carved back out. And, you know, that was fairly easy. What I did off camera was chipped away a little bit at it with a flush trim saw. And then after that, use a Forster bit to drill some holes out where the pockets were in the body for the pickups, for the controls, for the tremolo, and then for the jack plate. And After drilling those holes out, I used the template, tried to carefully place it back as close as I could. Now here I've done a little bit, but then I'm readjusting. I was proceeding with caution. So now I'm much more confident that I've got it in a good place, and I use the template then as a guide to finish routing out those cavities to the proper depth, which 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch for the pickup pockets, and then 1.5 inch for the control pockets, and then also for the jack cut. And as a reminder, 5/8 of an inch is the depth for the neck pocket. If you're routing a tremolo, you can start from the top using that template, and you go 1/2 inch through, and then you flip over the back and use the back template and go down till you meet, and then you try to leave a little shelf in there. And next up are the roundovers after I get that pocket situated. When I was putting the roundover on this body, I made a decision to do a 1/2 inch roundover, which is pretty standard on the back of this body. And then on the front of the body, I decided to do a 1/4 inch roundover. The reason for making that difference was wanting to not cut away more of the maple here on the top than necessary. And I can make a better judgment about that later on if I want to round it over some more after I get the belly carve cut out, and then after I finish rounding over on the arm rest, so that way that matches what is going on with the rest of the contour of the body. So with the roundovers done, it's time to turn my attention to the belly carve. So going at that with a combination of rasps, then the belt sander. The belt sander is kind of hard to get in there on those curves because that platen on the belt sander is wide and flat. But what I was able to do was to use the tip of it to get in there and carve away material, and then use the rasp to refine the shape and get it at the angle that I thought would be suitable. I'm not necessarily going for at this point sort of a stock look on the belly carve, just trying to kind of get it in there. And then after roughing it out with the rasp and with the belt sander, got in there some with the sanding block to get to the final shape, and then get out all the gouge marks and sanding scrapes and stuff from the rasp and from the belt sander. So I'm sitting here waiting for my iron to heat up. This is a trick I've seen used, and I've never used it before myself. I've seen the Shed Dreams do it most recently, who has a great channel. You should check him out. Where you take a wet rag or towel, lay it over your wood, and iron it to get the dents out, the dings out. When he did it, he was ironing the dings out of a ash blank. Well, this is a poplar body that has got some clamp dents in it. I sort of let it happen, trying to clamp this body on, or the top onto the body. I'm going to see if maybe this technique will help me get the dents that I have put in this poplar body out. So you wet a rag, lay it down over where it's at, get your iron, get hot, and iron. I'm going to see if it pops some of those dents back up. I'll be doggone, it did it. Use this other side here. There we go. So these are dents that I'll have to sand back out, which is fine. You kind of want to wet and raise the grain on a body. I think people have different opinions about this. I like to do that on something that I want a really smooth finish on. So when I'm making cutting boards or guitar bodies, I tend to wet them and let the grain get raised so we can sand it again. And I've got a couple of dings right here on this from clamping. I'm going to do that here. Gosh, that's a handy trick. All right, y'all, it works. I did a little color testing, and this is the color that I'm going to use for the quilted maple top on this Strat. I sent pictures to my buddy I'm making it for. He's approved. It came out a little dark at first when or kind of purplish almost. For the process, it's putting down some black dye, sanding that back, putting down some blue dye, then sanding it back, and got this. And then I'm going to do the same process for the back of the guitar. Although this here is not sanded back, and I'm going to see what my buddy thinks, whether he would want to sand back the poplar pieces of the guitar to give it sort of a similar thing all the way throughout, front and back, or leave the back just a tad bit bluer. So we'll see what he has to say about that. So that's going to do it for this episode. Here's a shot of the body finished. The only thing left to do then is to put the color on it. That'll be coming up in the next episode. For those of you who are interested in what the figure looks like, here it is with some moisture on it as I was wetting the grain to raise it before I gave it that finished sanding. It looks good. And if you're interested in what the contours look like on the back, there's that. And this is before I had ironed out the dents and neglected to get a shot of that with the dents ironed out. And, you know, I need to tease y'all with how well this neck is fitting into that neck pocket that I cut, and also what it looks like with the scratch plate on it. It's looking great. I think it's going to do great. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed doing the work and making it. And so if you like what you've seen, please like it. If you want to keep up with this build, hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Y'all take care.